who's getting on your nerves, who's really getting on your nerves, or whom would you like to change, and they never change. And whom are you talking to at night when you wake up feeling upset? Like maybe all of us know that you wake up or during the day, you feel like, oh, whenever I meet that person again, this is what I'm going to answer. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to say. And they're not going to do that to me another time.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Exploring You, our podcast to help you navigate the personal development jungle. My name is Alexandra Katzer, nature coach and forest bathing guide.
And I'm Darren Seidenberg of Elysium NLP and the Mind Core CIC.
And today we are very welcoming Tara Fuchs. Tara Fuchs is a life coach, especially focusing on relationships. And Tara and I, we met online actually through a LinkedIn series of another coach we both know. And that's how we started to get to know each other. So very welcome, Tara. It's great to have you on the show today.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Hey, Tara, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, as I said, I'm really excited to be talking about things that I feel passionate about, that I know have really helped a lot of people and supported people in their personal journey of developing themselves, and also letting go of limiting patterns and beliefs and feeling a lot more peace.
Cool. Then as a start, Tara, tell us a little bit more about you. Who are you?
Right. Okay. So that's always the question about like thinking about what is there to tell, like that could interest someone. So maybe to start with that, now I'm a certified coach working with a neurosystemic background, and later on, I think it would probably be nice to talk a little bit more about what is that. And I guide my clients within a safe space to explore more about what they carry inside, like what they believe in, what are their patterns, if they want to grow and if they want to let go of things, how that can be achieved, especially through clarifying relationships they have in their lives, because I'm working with a specific approach by Boudewijn Vermeulen, which focuses on the fact that we might have learned beliefs and patterns in the past through interactions within important relationships, and then how to work that, how to develop it, how to let it go. But I started out in a very different field, because I studied Japanese and Japanese economics, and I also lived in Japan, working in Japan and doing intercultural trainings and coaching for entrepreneurs and managers working with the Japanese. And as I was doing all those intercultural trainings and also living in Japan, I also lived in Spain. I traveled to India, New Zealand, and kind of a couple of times, or a lot of times actually. I started to see big differences in the people who were taking the trainings or doing the coaching. And some seemed to thrive in picking up ideas about cultural standards and doing a great job with negotiating in Japan and working with the Japanese, and others that they just didn't. Or there were a lot of people who understood what we were talking about, but they couldn't kind of behave in a different way. They couldn't adapt. So I saw there was a certain inflexibility within them. And some just point blank said, I don't care. I'll just be whoever I am. Either it works or it doesn't. And others were actually suffering, saying that I learned all these things. Why can I not put this into action? What's hindering me? So that's where I thought there must be something more, because at the time, like 20, 30 years ago, people were working with these cultural standards, and people were like studying about the differences and how people perceive time, or how people work and function within hierarchies, and the differences between the cultures. But that's not enough. So then I started to focus on inner values. What are the values of people involved, of enterprises involved, and how can that be matched and how can I develop further? So that's where that led me into the personal development coaching side of things.
I find
I'd love.
Sorry, Darren. Yeah, you go.
I was just going to say, she's got me at Japanese. You know what I'm like with the Japanese cultures and stuff. We've mentioned this a few times on podcasts. So I could be all day with you today. So I better step back a bit because I'll be so. I love anything about the Japanese culture and the idealism and stuff, and I'm fascinated by it all. So. Yeah, I better keep quiet for a bit.
Was there anything in particular you feel intrigued about when it comes to that?
I'm very much old school. I love the old style of the Japanese culture and the way the mannerisms, how they. For me, it's like everything they do is an art. It's about understanding every little minute detail, and when we look at that kind of thing, we can see the inner side of ourselves as well. Those intricate details where we can change. You know, I've said it in the podcast. You know, just making a cup of tea, the art of doing just something like that. You know, making sure the pot's hot, making sure it's covered in water, turning the cup so many times. There's the tiniest details into something as small as making a cup of tea.
Yeah.
Can actually make you think about how you do things yourself and how you can change. So I'm totally in with you on that, you know. And it's how where we don't understand things is because we're not looking into it a little bit more than we should do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
I totally agree.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be a good conversation, this, I think.
I'm looking forward to it.
Alexandra will be sat down in the background for a change. She was like, oh, I don't have to say anything now. No, sorry, Alexandra, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Oh, I find interesting, like all these cultural differences. But on the other hand, it also shows, although we are so different from our cultural influences, then internally we are all similar. Like we get conditioned by our culture, but we try to break free. Like when I travel or lived in so many different cultures as well, all we want internally is like to love someone and feel loved. But we are restricted by the conditioning of our society. So I think that I find that interesting to see that although we are different from a cultural perspective, we are all very similar in some ways as well.
I totally agree. There's so many things that just popped up in my head that I'd love to talk about. Like coming back to the Japanese culture, when I went to Japan for the first time, I was 22 years old. And that's where I started to learn something about context. So like people always ask me, like, how could you interpret this like Japanese silence? When no one's saying anything, how can you interpret it? That's where I learned that the Japanese culture is a high context culture, as opposed to other cultures, which are called low context cultures, where people explain a lot more about the intentions, what needs to be done. And the Japanese just don't do that. They expect you to read the context and to understand the context. And that means you need to have a lot of experience in those contexts to actually pick up on tiny signals, what's being expected of you in that context, what's appropriate, what's not. And so like when I was in Japan, I learned that people feel out context a lot more than I felt they do in Germany, or at least I wasn't aware of it, maybe because I'm born in Germany. So that all of that was very normal to me. And that, for me, that was the starting point of understanding that context and also interpersonal interaction has a lot to do with how we behave and how we feel. So that was the first time I actually realized that I cannot just say I am this way or I am the other way. Like I might be a certain way, but my behavior will change depending on the context I'm in. And that was the first time, like this is a little snippet that also comes into the neurosystemic concept and ideas and world. But that's what that was the first time I realized that context matters.
Mm-hmm.
You say that's the biggest difference between like the East and the West?
Oh, that's a big one. I don't know. I think context is a big difference. There are other differences as well. There's so many differences, but I felt that context was a big one, because when I talk to participants in my trainings and workshops, they sometimes would say things like, oh, that's weird about the Japanese. Why do they do that? That's really weird. It doesn't make any sense. And then having lived in Japan, and actually I was adopted by a Japanese family, like after half a year, they just adopted me into the family. I moved into the house and they said, like, we feel so close to you. Why not have you here as our third child, like a third daughter? And they actually gave me a new name. And whenever someone came to the house, they were like shocked. They say, oh my God, you have a foreigner in your house. And they said, no, she's not a foreigner. She's an insider. She belongs to us. So how can she be a foreigner if she belongs to us? And then, like, I learned it from the inside. I learned the behavior and everything from the inside out. But whenever I talked about this to other people, like in Germany, for example, they said, how weird. That doesn't make any sense. But then I started to explain it in a different way. I said, look, if you look at that context, this behavior does make a lot of sense within that given context. It doesn't make any sense if you look at it from the outside. For example, I mean, would you like me to give examples? I mean, if we go down that path, we won't be focusing so much on coaching, but more on the cultural differences. But for example, Japan is a relatively, it's an island. And there are a lot of people on a confined space, because although, I mean, Japan is like bigger than Germany in terms of land mass, there is still a lot of space that cannot be inhabited due to being mountains and such. So there's little space, and a lot of people in small spaces, big cities. So here it's really important not to actually get on the nerves of your fellow beings. So people try to contain themselves in their space, and like very often I find they try to feel out like this space between two people to find out where would it be already touching your space. So they're not going to go as far as saying things like we do in Germany. We say like, well, just say this. If you don't like it, stop me. But for the Japanese idea of things, if I get to a stage where you have to stop me, I already went too far. I already touched your space. We don't want to touch you. I don't want to touch your space. So I have to try and feel it out, feel the context, and contain me within myself to the point of where actually they have funny things. Like if you want to have a private conversation and you don't want to other people to hear this, and even don't want to disturb others, you'll put on the radio and have the conversation beside the radio. Little things like that. And to someone else, this might make no sense, for example. No. Or another example would be like, if, I mean, these are, I don't know whether these are the best examples. It's just popping up in my head, feeling a little vulnerable. But, but if, for example,
I'll put you on the spot now, haven't I?
For example, if you have an allergy in Japan, or your nose is running, you're not supposed to take out something and blow your nose, because this might feel awkward to a third person. So people would just do this all day. And this would actually drive Germans, and I don't know who else, would drive mad, because they would think, why don't you just blow your nose once and leave me alone? It's getting on my nerves. But they won't do that. So they'd rather leave the room and blow their nose and come back in, or just keep doing that. So there are tiny differences. And this only makes sense if you understand the reason behind it. It's like,
and I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned like what's normal, and I noticed that as well through all my traveling and living in different countries. What's normal in Germany is so not normal in Australia, vice versa, or what's normal in Australia is so not normal in South Africa. So the question is, what is normal? You know, it's just our normal is what we have grown into and what we have learned. And I think that brings us back to this relationships, especially the relationships we are experiencing with our primary carers in our first years. Do you feel there is a strong connection to these experiences we have in our early years, how we experience relationships in our adult life?
Connection to what exactly? To the beliefs and patterns we form, or what we feel is normal? Absolutely. I think, like, we are social beings, and we cannot survive without a caretaker, caregivers in our early lives. And like mothers, fathers, family members, or even third persons, they will address us in a way they learn to address us. And then we will have a reaction based on how they talk to us. And very often beliefs are being formed kind of really innocently, without anyone wanting us to form a belief, by talking to us a certain way or behaving a certain way. And these could be, like, a lot of people, that there are three main beliefs that usually show up, or I observe that show up in a lot of clients I work with. Is, for example, the belief that they weren't important. I'm not important, or I'm not good enough. Or another one is like, mistakes are bad. And so when we look back at what happened to people in their childhood, were really normal things, like they did something and someone told them, no, this isn't right, do it another way. Or a caretaker or caregiver got upset with someone doing something. They experimented with something, it went wrong, they knocked over a glass of water, whatever happened, and then someone gets upset. So we can, in the neurosystemic concept, we will always learn the content of a thing plus the given context. And then we pick up on the energy and the way people talk to us when something's happened. For example, if I knock over a glass of water when I'm a child, innocently, and then it pours over some important piece of paper, or it may not, it will just disturb my caregiver. And the caregiver might feel really upset, like, why did you do that now? Can you not pay attention? And now look, this is all wet. And can you not just wait and sit down when I tell you so? What will I come to believe about myself? That I did something wrong, the other person got upset, so this is bad. I don't want this, like my mom, dad, or whoever, want to feel upset. So like a weird feeling, or this feeling, might stick. And usually as children, this doesn't happen just one time. It happens any number of times from from a time early on. And then this is the thing with our brains. Once we start to have a belief, then we go on confirming it. Then every time something happens and someone might upset, I might relate back to myself, and like, it's rather unconscious, but think, look, this is where I'm not good enough. Otherwise this wouldn't have happened, or that person wouldn't have talked to me in that specific way. And this is true for most of the beliefs we have. And sometimes, like working with clients, there's sometimes also the question, like, whom did you want to be loved by? Whose love did you crave as a child? And then who did you have to be? How did you have to behave? How did you think you needed to behave to actually get that love or attention or whatever that may be? So that then also really coins how we think we need to be in order to be loved. And then once we form that belief, we'll just go on confirming it, plus we'll reinforce it in the course of our lives. Whenever things go wrong, we revert back to that. Or even if they don't go wrong, just in the normal course of life. And that can prove to be really limiting. And then sometimes, for example, someone shows up and says, like, I have a lot of trouble with procrastination, or I feel a lot of resistance. Like, for example, me the other day, I felt so much resistance. And I thought, why am I not moving forward? What's happening? All of a sudden, I thought, like, what's hindering me? What's going on? And then I was reading a few really interesting resources. And then I was observing myself. Through the coach training, one thing I learned, which is also really beneficial, is to go into the inner observer and to look at what's happening inside while I was looking at the resistance, for example, that I might have learned as a child, I don't know, I found out that if I start fighting this inner resistance, the resistance would just grow bigger. It was like a, like, I don't know how to call it, but I was fighting resistance would grow bigger. I was fighting again, it would grow bigger again. So then all of a sudden I thought, and that's also part of a neurosystemic approach, why not actually have a conversation with the inner resistance, like to see it's a force within me. Let's talk to it. What does it want to tell me? So obviously, if it gets stronger and stronger, it really wants to be heard. So I did a little coaching, exploring the inner resistance. And then I finally understood that this inner resistance just wanted to protect me. And then when I understood that, I could actually look at it in more detail and then let it go. So I thought, so I learned that like 20 years ago or 18 years ago when I did my first coach training, to not fight, but to let go, to look at things, to breathe through it, to integrate the body, to actually really feel how things show up in myself. Now, that could have been a situation from my childhood, and it shows up now, it gets triggered now. So I import it into the here and now. So when I then look at it, go into the inner observer, look at it, feel it out. How does it feel? What are my thoughts about it? How does my body feel? A lot of the times I can sense myself tensing up in some way. And then to let go of that tension in the body and to just stay focused with the emotions that came up and to just gently let it dissolve without pushing, then that makes a real difference. So although, yes, a lot of the beliefs are being formed in childhood through interpersonal interactions, we can evolve, we can let it go. So, yeah. I think I veered off that question.
I like your point about not fighting, because I think that is a key statement. And I totally agree with you, Tara. The more we fight something, or the more we don't like something within us and try to push it away, the bigger it becomes. Because yes, in the end, this part was developed during a time in our childhood where we didn't get the love and attention we might have needed at that point in time. And the same way, if we push it away now, we are treating us the same way as someone treated us in our childhood. And if we start turning inward and, like you said, observing and journaling, getting in touch, what is it that you are afraid of or scared of? What can I do to support you? And journaling, I love journaling as well. Get in touch with this, procrastinate, the part that wants to procrastinate, or the part that is angry. And when I look at my journaling sessions, it all comes to, oh, I just want to feel loved, and if we push that part away, we are repeating the same pattern that happened in our early years.
Absolutely. I so love what you're saying. And also it's fantastic you're bringing up journaling as well. I love that too. And I was thinking a lot about, why does journaling have a different quality as opposed to just randomly thinking about things? And I found, like in my case, a lot has to do with focus. So if we manage to keep our focus long enough to one given thing, and feel it out and feel it in the bodies, we can change it. And within coaching sessions also, I do work with a format that's called diet. It's a diet where a client and myself would circle back to a question that we agreed on, and we would explore answers to that question. So I would give the question and hear the answer, and write it down, which will create a space for the client to feel out whatever they said and how their body reacts. And then I'll present the same question. And then usually, like after 4, 5, 6, 7 answers, the obvious answers that people usually dwell on when they think about something, they will gradually touch onto new answers or new aspects that come up that they haven't really thought about before. And maybe I think in journaling, a similar thing takes place.
It's interesting you talk about. Sorry, Jack, I was just going to say there was an article I read the other day, and it was about children studying. And there are two types of people, two types of students. One who would, when they were revising for exams, they would write down their notes. So anything they were looking at to help them with their exam, they were actually writing things down. And then there was the group that were actually using the computer to type it down. And the ones that written stuff down got the better marks or more passes than those that used the computer. So it is about that. And I think it's right. It's when you're writing it down, you're actually experiencing it more as you're writing. It's the more of a flow of things. So you're more immersed into it. Just a computer, just tapping it in, it's a mechanical thing. Whereas with writing something, it's like back in the day, you know, writing a letter to somebody means a lot more than sending somebody an email, because you've got more of a connection, more of a love and an affection to what you're actually writing. So journaling is that bringing out that more of a, again, going back to the detail of what you're experiencing and putting it down on paper makes it stand out a lot more to you than just typing it out or just going through with it on your head.
That's really interesting. I always find it really interesting what we can achieve if we manage to focus long enough on one single thing and really get deep with it, and how our interest grows, also how our creativity comes forward. Really interesting.
You also mentioned that like observing the body and like feeling the feelings that are coming up. And from own experience, I know this is not easy to do. And that's why I think if we feel uncomfortable, a lot of times we try to distract ourselves. Like, okay, we do some retail therapy, go some shopping or binge watching or eating chocolate or playing a little computer game. So do you maybe have a tip how you can stay with the feeling without getting overwhelmed?
Yes, I was just thinking, I mean, this is where coaching comes and really helpful to start with. And then I think it improves with practice. To, like what you were just saying is so valuable, actually, to be aware of the fact that we might have a tendency to distract ourselves whenever something is coming up that doesn't feel good. To understand that that's what's happening is already the first step. And then it depends on the level of discomfort that's happening. So within coaching, the coach creates a safe space for the client to be in and to feel held in a way within that safe space. And also with the other human being present and focused, it's much easier to stay observing without distracting oneself. And this is, I think it's also a matter of practice. I mean, a lot of people do practice mindfulness and meditation and yoga, which is also really helpful, or do like things like Feldenkrais. There are a lot of people maybe who've tried or doing Feldenkrais to improve some physical ailments. But if I recall correctly, then Moshe Feldenkrais developed his method as a means of trying to explore how we learn, how our brain connects things, and how we explore stuff, and how we focus. So that could also maybe be something helpful in connecting with our bodies first, and then whenever something is happening that we don't really like, to go back to that experience we had, like during a Feldenkrais session. Or also emotional freedom technique proves to be really helpful in staying focused on things that might not feel so comfortable at first without distracting ourselves. Yes.
And I agree. The body is so important to integrate in or use as well in the coaching. And I remember we did a session together where I was focusing on inner masculine and the relationship with my dad. And that was an amazing session. And we also included the body. Do you want to talk a little bit about your approach that you do in your coaching sessions, especially in regards to working on relationships?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to. So, as said earlier, also, when a client comes to me with a certain problem or challenge, that could be something like being very reactive to one's child, or to be wanting to move forward, but feeling like resistance and not wanting to move forward, or having had a tough separation, or like trouble with a coworker, or like things like that, then I would usually start off asking questions. Like, they would tell me something more about the situation, and then it's usually about finding out who triggers that, which person and whose behavior triggers whatever I don't like happening within myself. And it's really interesting how people intuitively come up with names of people, even fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters, where they feel that these were the people who initially triggered that kind of a reaction, and they feel stuck with it. Like, there could be questions like, who's getting on your nerves? Who's really getting on your nerves? Or whom would you like to change? And they never change. Who are you talking to at night when you wake up feeling upset? Like, maybe all of us know that you wake up, or during the day, you feel like, oh, whenever I meet that person again, this is what I'm going to answer. That's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to say. And they're not going to do that to me another time, things like that. So I would ask them, whom would you like to try and avoid? Or also, whom do you feel abandoned by? So a lot of energy gets stuck within these, like, we call it critical relationships. And then we explore that relationship in the sense of whatever feelings come up, what are the expectations that are being met, but also the positive side of things. And this usually, because we integrate emotions and body, releases like blocked energy that's been linked to this interaction, and they can actually then let it go. And it's always fascinating to me. It's not as if we go like, all right, now let it go. It just happens automatically. And sometimes it's not even so obvious when it happened. And it's the interesting thing is that, I mean, our brain is how's that called again? It's a network, like a neurological network. So things are connected in ways we're not aware of. If we let go of one blockage, it might affect other things. So sometimes clients might feel, all right, now I'm working on this relationship. How will it affect my resistance? How will it affect my not taking action? Well, the thing is, I don't know, but it does help. So when they change the relationship, when they release the blocked energy, when they stop going around in circles, when they stop believing certain things that they think that those people have made them believe, then all of a sudden some like inner space opens up, and there will be more inner leadership, more ease, even to the point where people feel that, right, I could even install a little playground. I could experiment with things. When they let go of beliefs like, if you do this and I fail, this is something really big. If they let go of these things by means of working a relationship and clarifying a relationship, they can actually establish kind of a sandbox where they can start playing with things and find ease with things and lead their lives from a different place. Does that answer the question?
I've got a long list of people. I'd probably take up a lot of your time for that, I tell you. Where do you find we talk about the tipping point, so which is the small changes for people. They get to a certain point and the little changes they need to tip to the other side and moving forward. Where do you find that when it comes to relationships in particular, where do you find the tipping point for them to get to and then change, or the small changes that they need to go the right way?
Right. A lot of the times I feel that people stay rather a long time within a situation where they actually suffer before taking action. And doing a coaching, clarifying a relationship is a process that takes a few hours, but it's like it speeds up the letting go of stuff. So very often people wait until there is a separation, there's a divorce at hand, children are already suffering, or they have been in a job they didn't want to stay in for years before making a change. And the tipping point very often, I feel, is where they've come to suffer so much that they don't know how to move forward. Although it's better to act faster and to do a coaching faster, but the tipping point very often comes along with a lot of suffering. And then they do a coaching, they clarify a relationship, and then what usually, or what I can see in a lot of people, what changes is the step between knowing what they need to do into just doing it. So the difference between thinking about stuff and doing them, or thinking they should feel different and feeling different. So it's actually a big change. It might look like a small one, but within them, it's a big change. Is that what you were asking for as a tipping point? I'm not sure.
It's quite a good way of putting it, actually. It's like you say, is that it can make a subtle difference, that point where we realize where we are at and where we want to be, and it's making that connection of moving that way. But it is that point of where we get so far, we've gone beyond, we feel like we've gone beyond help. And we need, it's about having that strength, and in a sense, and that mindset to say, look, it's getting to a point where I need to cut things off here. This relationship isn't working. We need to break this off. As much as difficult as it is, we either go too far into the depth of remorse or difficulty, or we just go, do you know what? It's not working. We have to stop it, or we do something about it. So it's getting to that point. It's not going beyond that point and saying we need to stop now and look at this a different way, or we just need to part ways.
Absolutely. And it doesn't even have to hurt. So I think that's where, people sometimes hold back and say, I don't want to do this. It might hurt, or I might take a decision I don't want to take. But if you do that kind of inner work, you actually might come out in a different place where it either doesn't feel that you don't want to take that decision, or actually the decision becomes obsolete. Because it's really interesting. If we change something within ourselves, we might react or respond differently to a given situation. And then the other person might also respond differently. So that can lead us to a very different place. And I would like to give an example of, for example, there's so many separations and divorces taking place in our society these days. And for example, when children are involved, they can suffer really badly from parents. Although they have divorced, they don't have good feelings towards each other. So while we might think, all right, that's done with, it's not done with for the children. So if we then let go and work the feelings we have maybe towards their father or their mother, it'll make life a lot easier for the children. So this is a fantastic way of working it, letting go of things that can affect not only ourselves, but also our children.
I could totally relate to it, because with my separation from my ex-wife, it was getting to a point where it was getting totally out of control, and the children were seeing it, and for me, it's like I had that realization: I have to go. This is not fair it's not fair on me for sure, but it's certainly not fair on them. So and it was very, it was messy, or the divorce and everything was really bad. There was lots of fights, and it was that use the children, don't use the children, and it's difficult to be able to be in that situation and say I need help as well. As you know, as male, you have that machoism. As females, they want to stay into it as much as possible, but it's difficult to say. And I know as a coach, it's easy for us to say, but the one thing I like about coaching is that it gives people the opportunity to open up for themselves and see what it is, what they need to do to change. We can give them the tools and techniques, but it's down to them to make the choice. And it's that choice of whether we stay in that relationship, and we can work it as much as we possibly can. But when it gets to a certain point, enough's enough. You have to break free, because especially when there's children involved, and it's impact. I know it's impacted on them now. I have, my relationship with my two older children is totally, it's not there in a way, which is bad. It's sad, but that's their choice, and it's my choice as well. But we have to understand, with these relationships, it is your choice of what you do to move forward. I personally think anyway, and it's whether you get that help or you have that understanding of where you're actually at is what's going to make the difference going forward.
Yes, and also even after a separation, even after a divorce, and even if a relationship isn't thriving, even like including to children, if we work ourselves, that might even make a difference in how children relate back to us. Because if sometimes, and it's totally understandable, if we feel some negativity about something that's happened, they will sense it and they will probably want to avoid it because they cannot take sides. So even after a divorce has happened, if we clear out the negativity or even bitterness or whatever there is, there could be strong feelings, even like hatred, disappointment. And if we manage to let go more of that, it becomes easier also for children to relate back to us, because they won't feel that they'll have to avoid it or feel bad or whatever there is within them. So that can actually be really helpful even after separations and divorces, to start to feel at ease and feel peace. And that will also help everyone else involved.
Yeah, there's so much I could go into this, to be honest with you. I was quite looking forward to this conversation with that when Alexandra said it's all about relationships. I thought, whoa, this is going to be good, So, but it is quite a strong, for me, it's quite a strong topic. It's when somebody can come in, and as a coach, I can be more. I can be more open to a conversation. Whereas if I get somebody who's going to say, well, you're in the wrong, or you need to do this and you need to do that, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to, you don't tell me, you don't know my situation. So exactly. I ain't going to listen to you. And you break off then, and that rapport with that person breaks straight away. Where, it's different as a coach. You've got to be able to give that person the opportunity to talk, haven't you?
Absolutely. And as a coach, like I always know, I cannot know and I won't know. And it's not important for me to know the answers that will come up in my client, because there are answers, like every person has immense inner resources. And it's my job to guide them into finding access and connecting back to their inner resources, and to act and develop from that space where they can actually feel the energy, the inner glow. It's so meaningful to the client if it comes up from inside. How am I to know? And it's not important. My job is to approach this with respect, appreciation, and non-judgmental place, and actually really opening up to all the resources, all the things coming up in the client, and to explore this together.
And that's the key thing. That's non-judgmental. It's the key word, isn't it? Non-judgmental.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that circles back to the context thing we started off with. Within every human being, there is this personal context on the inside that's been learned and tested and reinforced and whatever. And it's exploring the context that's within a person through the relationships that might have coined certain things of the inner context that enables us to loosen it up, break free, reconnect to ourselves, and actually feel really good about ourselves moving forward in whatever given situation. That could be in a career, or choosing a job, or leaving a job, or getting along better with neurodiverse co-workers, family members, what in any given situation. So a lot of the times I'm being asked, like, what do you specify on? Like which people, what clients, what are you specifying on? I mean, what I say is, like, I'm working with releasing energy and patterns and beliefs that have been kind of coined in relationships. And we all have relationships. There's so many different relationships in our lives. And if clarifying the relationships helps us to understand ourselves better, to feel better about ourselves, and to move forward in life, I mean, I think that's all there is to it, and it's absolutely valuable. And I use that myself, actually. I I use the method on myself regularly, because it's such a beautiful way of developing and empowering myself. I love it. I mean, it can be like sometimes when and I need to do this myself to know how it could be for my clients when I start with a task, and I start with a task a week before the coaching, and I journal, I write down certain things, and I feel how it makes me feel. And then with the coaching, to release it all, there can be yawning and shaking and laughing and sneezing and coughing and everything, where you can see actually the body lets it all go and releases and relaxes. And it's always so interesting then in the 7-day or 1 week or 2 week period after a coaching to actually write down the positive changes I can observe, because they can go unnoticed, because they feel so natural, as if it's always been that way. And sometimes I can't even remember the problem I've had before doing the work.
And I think it's nice that you just mentioned, like, notice the changes in the outside world, because what I've experienced in the past as well, once I started clearing my inner relationships, or my relationship to myself, becoming more loving, more empathetic, more compassionate, like for myself, then also the outer world is changing. So I always feel the outer world is reflecting what's happening inside you. And once you work on this, the outer world is changing as well.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, he's having that conversation. I mean, I got into NLPs for people to communicate better, mainly, but it's about that communicating with yourself as well as with others is the key point. Because what you tend to do, you talk yourself out of things, or you'll talk yourself into trouble, rather than trying to talk yourself out of it by having those inner conversations and how you're dealing with things. Yeah, so I totally agree with you as well.
Well, that was a lovely conversation. I really enjoyed it. And I think now we give you your 5 minutes of fame. The floor is yours.
So 5 minutes of fame in the sense of something I overcame in my own life, or something?
No, or you can talk about your business, any special project or offer you have going on at the moment, where people can find you. So just talk about your business and what you are here to do.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, I'll be launching my new website at tarafuchs.de soon, where you'll find like a few photos and information, my bio and things like that. And you can also easily connect with me to just get in touch and see whether there's something I could support you with. So the first contact is always free. There's no obligation, no strings attached, to find out what this way of clarifying relationship could do for you. I have to think here now. What else? It's the website will start off being in German, but I will translate it into English and also Spanish. So I do coach in English and Spanish as well as German, and also like online coachings and in person in southern Germany. So just get in touch, and yeah, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. And I can totally vouch for Tara. She's a very amazing coach. When we had the session, I felt very safe, supported. Yeah, sorry. And it was just amazing to see what comes up from the subconscious that you don't even think about. So yeah, get in touch with. Feel like there are relationships that you need to clear.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Great.
And if there are any questions coming up after watching this, just feel free to contact me at any time. I've got my contact details on my website as well.
Great.
Yeah, we'll put Tara's details into the text on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to get in touch with her direct through there. Anything else, Alexandra? I don't know if there's anything else.
No, I think we can just thank our supporters.
Yeah, our supporters, Promo Doodle, the Professional Bodyguard Association, Burnley District Motorcycle Club, Mira Gavaccio, and Tailors of Liverpool. And also, we're also grateful for any donations for our retreat and training centre for men and veterans with mental health. You can either get us on the Easy fundraising page, Mindcore, and also GoFundMe, which is the retreat and training centre. So yeah, thanks, Tara, and it's been an absolute pleasure meeting you. I'm sure we'll get you back on again, because there's a lot more Japanese culture. So yeah, really great to see you again.
Thank you so much to both of you. I love talking to you.
Okay, stuff. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.